Hi, I'm Julia from Aephoria Partners, and I'm here to talk to you about remaining emergent. So as a way to understand this, I want you to think about when you last were at a party. Think about being at the party in your best outfit, and suddenly your best song in the whole world gets played. You hop up and you start dancing. Now have a little think. What is that song? Where does it come from? Did you find it early in life, or have you discovered it later? And what are your dance moves? Think about when you developed your dance moves. Did you develop your dance moves in your 20s? Do you still do the same kind of thing that you were doing in your 20s on the dance floor? Or have you adapted it a little bit? Are you the kind of person that is waltzing to Gangnam Style? Are you the kind of person that is doing the same dance to different musics? Or can you adapt your dance to be more in sync with the music you're looking for? In a way, that example embodies what we mean about remaining emergent. For many people, they learn their dance style in their 20s and they do the same old shuffle throughout their entire life. They do the same shuffle no matter what the song is. They might speed it up or slow it down, but basically it's the same dance. Now that's an example of somebody not remaining emergent, not being responsive and relevant to the environment. Their choice of behavior is based on some old pattern that worked really well in their 20s, but may not be relevant now. A similar example is somebody who's in the 80s who says something like, I have the same values now as I had when I was 15. Now for some people that might be a demonstration of consistency in life and an ability to stick by traditional, for example, values. For me, my sense is that as we grow and learn and have babies and get educated and have relationships fail, our values tend to change and grow over time. So the way we're making sense of the world needs to change. We need to remain emergent. So that's what I'm here to talk about today, and I wanted to give you an idea of the work of 3 philosophers who spoke about remaining emergent. So the first one was Heidegger, the German, who said, we need to remain emergent. We need to remain relevant. It is what makes us human, is this capacity to keep remaining emergent. Jean-Paul Sartre spoke about the difference between a human and an object is that objects stay the same. A stone is a stone, is a stone, is a stone. But a human can emerge. It can be a child, it can be a teenager, it can be a cook, it can be a painter, it can be an IT specialist. This is what defines our humanity. It's our ability to emerge. So at this point I want to introduce the work of Steve Biko, who's a South African existential philosopher. And he was interested in inner freedom. So he, along with other people, developed an ideology called Black consciousness. And Black consciousness was primarily a way of supporting the freedom of Black people in South Africa. And he spoke about outer freedom, which is the right to vote, the ability of the government to service your needs, education, health, etc., etc., and all the external stuff. But Biko said that freedom is primarily about inner freedom. And what is inner freedom? Because when we see transitions in countries, we often see how suddenly people have outer freedom, they also might have a BMW. They might also have opportunities for new lives, education, getting around the world, all of those things. But somehow there's something which suggests that the inner freedom is not necessarily in place, that they're still dancing to a very old tune, just as we saw in that disco example I gave earlier. So this whole business of inner freedom, Biko spoke primarily about black people in this example, and he said that under the apartheid government, black identities were undermined, were devalued, and sometimes it was better for people to discard their blackness and try and take on a more white way of operating in the world, because blackness had been so undermined by the apartheid government. And Biko said that this really limited the identities of people so much that they couldn't take their outer freedom more fully. So he suggested that people explore their blackness, bring it back into place, infuse it with pride, and use it as a base from which to obtain outer freedom. So the whole idea about black consciousness is inner freedom brings outer freedom. So then we have this idea of taking in discarded identities, using them to populate the number of identities inside us. And we see now how this fits together with the identity theory that I spoke about in a different video. So this idea that we remain emergent when we bring in new identities that are relevant to the current context, so that we can continue to have a relationship with the context. We bring in these identities. We may have to infuse them with pride, but they expand our inner world so that we are more agile in the world. And I suppose that's the real story, is if we want to remain relevant to the world, we're going to have to grow and learn and be relevant to the world and create identities that are contemporary, not based on a recipe that our parents gave us, but that their parents gave them. You know, recipes dated back to the 19th century, which may or may not connect with our current reality. So if we are going to remain relevant, then we have to keep emerging and expanding our identity so that we can have traction in the world. When we are irrelevant, the world can't connect with us. When we ask things of the world could easily ignore us because we're not relevant. So in order to have a greater impact on the world and to be able to devise and manifest a meaningful life for ourselves, we need to have relevance, because it is through our very relevance that we actually can touch and impact on the world. It is the only way in which we have traction on this earth.